Welcome to another edition of Throwing Bagels. Kevin Mooney here with you alongside Chris Douglas. Hey, Chris.
Kevin, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, sir?
Doing very well.
And Jason Haimo with us as well. Hi, Jason.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Great to see the both of you over the weekend in Oswego at the Communications Alumni Dinner.
It's been a while.
First time. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't been together in over a decade.
Yeah,
we haven't seen each other.
Crazy enough.
The last time we were in Oswego together.
Yeah. So it was great to catch up. And if you're new to the podcast, we are the three of us all met at SUNY Oswego. We all went through the broadcasting program and we've all kept in touch since then. And then we just decided, what the heck, let's start a podcast. So that happened late last year / early this year. And we're still rolling. Hard to
Simple
believe
as that.
We're still here.
And joining us on this edition of the Throwing Bagels podcast, and it's another extraordinary guest. It is our pleasure, our honor to welcome in the Dean of the School of Communication, Media, and the Arts at SUNY Oswego, Dr. Jennifer Knapp. Dr. Knapp, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kevin. Hey, guys, it's great to be here. I'm excited.
Glad to have you.
No, we're excited as well. So first off, let's begin. You were at the Communication Studies Alumni Dinner. You were also at part of a panel discussion, the hard hat tour of Hewitt Hall, which was great. What was your impression of that weekend?
Yeah, so there's a lot of exciting things going on campus, and it's always great when alumni come back because then you get to show off all the cool things that are happening, and you get to not only listen to the great stories that you have of the time that you were at Oswego, but share some new stories and connect you with students. So I think that part is always a huge success. That's what I love about the Com Studies reunion dinner is that, sure, it's a reunion for people like you, but we also invite current students. So it gives them an opportunity to network. And I can tell you, giving them more opportunities to network is really needed right now. So we, on the sly, I mean, you wouldn't have known this, but we had a networking workshop earlier in the week to prepare them so that they were ready to go and were just a little bit more confident with their interpersonal communication skills. So I think that paid off for a lot of them. But all around a great weekend, always fun to spend time with alumni because it really drives home what a special place Oswego is.
Was that workshop because people have just been locked up for so long that they kind of like forgot how to like really interact with alumni and things like that?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, you definitely nailed it, Jason. If communication is a skill, if it were something that people were just, born with and able to do, I'd be out of a job. I wouldn't have a degree in comm because it'd be like, well, either you got it or you don't. But lucky for me, it's a skill that needs practice. And people just don't practice like they used to. And there's just a lot of confidence issues. We see that a lot with our students, not to get into like a super heavy topic right away, but we know our students and they're wildly talented. They're highly skilled. But for some reason, they just get really choked up when it comes time to brag about themselves, even if it's in an interview situation. And it really is a confidence issue. It has nothing to do with their level of preparedness. It just is purely they really haven't practiced that skill of interpersonal communication. So we're working hard to see if we can help them out.
Yeah, I can tell you that was definitely me at one point in time. And even to this day, at times, still like that, but not as much as I was when I was younger. It was great to meet you in person at the hard hat tour of Hewitt Hall. And what are some of the exciting developments around that will be the new home for SCMA?
Yeah, it is. It's an $80 million project. When you combine that with the $44 million renovation that we've already done with Tyler Hall, when you put those two together, so those two buildings will contain all of the faculty and the studio spaces and specialized spaces for SCMA. So we're really excited about that. Hewitt is really going to be world-class. There was a time really early on when we broke ground that there was some sort of like PR materials that were going around that was like, this is one of a kind, state of the art, no place like this exists in the world. And there were a couple of us who were like, I don't know if we really want to go that far with our marketing, that I don't know about, one in a million, the only thing in the world. But it is unique in terms of the types of programs that we're combining in the building. So that part is true. So it's going to be the home of all of Communication Studies, which, just to catch your listeners up, that's 4 undergraduate programs and 1 graduate program. Broadcasting and Mass Communication, which is what we're most known for. You are living proof of that. Journalism, Public Relations, and Communication. We've got a grad program in Strategic Communication. And then half of the Department of Art and Design are going into Hewitt. So it's going to be our graphic design and our interaction design majors. Then we also have Cinema and Screen Studies, which is relatively new to SCMA. It's not a new program, but they used to be part of English and Creative Writing, but they've formed their own department now, and they've joined SCMA. So in addition to all those great programs that are going to be there, we're going to have 2 broadcasting studios, a podcast studio. So if we want to do an on-location episode of Throwing Bagels, I'm sure, open invitation.
Beautiful.
We'd love to.
Animation studio, all sorts of graphic design labs. We're going to have some audio labs, Foley rooms, VR spaces. It's going to be spectacular. And it's all sort of centered around what is called the collaborative core. So again, if you've got listeners that spent any time in Hewitt, they'll probably remember it being a very dark, very cold sort of place. So they've actually put skylights in the roof and added more windows. So there's a lot more natural light, and created this sort of light that comes right down into the center of the building, and then it kind of filters out throughout. So it's got a completely different feel to it than the Hewitt than a lot of your listeners will remember.
Sure. I mean, I remember basically you would walk into the main level and there'd be like some 1970s couches sitting around a table. And that was your collaboration space. But now, as you mentioned, Dr. Knapp, there's going to be a whole center of the building devoted to collaboration. So that's great news.
Yes.
As you also walk in through a loading dock at the same time.
I remember that.
Totally different vibe. Just like, again, if people remember being in Tyler used to be really dark too. And now the front of Tyler, we've got this beautiful lobby that's got all these really fantastic windows. So a lot of natural light coming into that building now too.
Most grads that are kind of in their 40s like we are may not necessarily know what the SCMA program is. Can you just kind of briefly explain what the SCMA program is? My God, I can't talk tonight. Yeah,
I'm happy to talk about SCMA. So it's the newest school at Oswego. It was formed in 2007. So all of our programs used to live in liberal arts and sciences in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And then with a lot of leadership, but primarily with President Stanley and Fritz Masser at the time, it was their vision to create a school to not only capitalize on our reputation from our broadcasting and our art and design programs. Those are the biggest departments in SCMA out of the 5 that make it up now. So it started in 2007, and it really came out of a genuine organic place. Our students and our faculty were already collaborating with one another, developing interdisciplinary centers and things like that. And eventually it was just like, well, let's just sort of break off, go a little rogue, create our own school, and do our own stuff. And so that's been over 15 years now. And yeah, we've seen the school grow, not just in enrollment, but just in the number of programs. So it started with 4 departments, and now that Cinema and Screen Studies joined, it's 5. And Oswego, which is the performing arts series that we have on campus, also got moved over to SCMA. So we've got a really robust portfolio of things going on.
You had mentioned Fritz Masser. During his speech at the dinner, he had mentioned that 50-something years ago, the state covered about 80% of the SUNY tuition. These days, the state covers less than 30%.
Yes.
While that has led to tuition increases, have there been any other measures Oswego has taken to ensure any top-notch experience in the face of these ever-tightening budgets, and were classes or disciplines eliminated?
Yeah, so we've been fortunate. We haven't had to eliminate any programs. We've really only seen growth. There's one exception, and that is we used to have a full-on Bachelor of Arts program in art history, but we just weren't graduating enough students in that program. So we still have an art history minor, but the major got sunsetted. And three out of the 5 departments are also accredited. So we've got the music, the art and design, and the theater departments all have national accreditation. There's no accrediting body for comm studies, and cinema and screen studies could go under art if they wanted to, but at the moment they're happy to sort of just be independent contractors. So I don't think that that's going to happen anytime soon. So, the funding it's not necessarily been a struggle, but it hasn't really grown with the growth of the school, which is ultimately an issue. And as you can imagine, after, I've said a bunch of times the number of programs and the types of programs that we have in SCMA, these are all incredibly expensive programs to run. So building a new building with 2 brand new broadcasting studios and a podcasting studio, and by the way, a ton of editing suites and a ton of editing labs and computer labs for our graphics students, and even just for our broadcasting and our film students. Obviously, they need spaces as well. That's all resource intensive. Then you move over to Tyler. We've got 2 world-class recording studios because we now have a major in audio recording. We've got beautiful instrumental rehearsal room. Our theater is better than most theaters you're probably going to, unless you're going to Broadway. Just sort of your regional theater. We're certainly on par with any sort of professional regional theater. Again, so much money. I mean, even just the lamps that go in the lights for the theater department, we're talking hundreds of dollars. So it's definitely tough to keep our programs going, but we think we have a plan. We're going to try to launch a fundraising campaign, an endowed campaign for the School of Communication, Media, and the Arts called Creating Laker Legends. Because we know, I'm sitting with 3 right now, legends, Laker legends. We know we've got a lot out there. And so we want to capitalize on your success and your reputations, but also, pull at your heartstrings. See if you want to give back to your old institution.
Dr. Knapp, you mentioned that you can't just buy a camera and expect it to last 15 years. You have to buy multiple cameras, and then how often would you need to replace that kind of equipment? What's your timeline for that?
Yeah, I think in industry, you're probably lucky if you can get 5 years out of, say, like a TV camera. So we have to make it last at least 7 to 10 years. So, there are a couple of things as we wait for Hewitt to come online that are being held together with duct tape and prayers. That's just that they got to last a couple more years. Yeah. But we know once we get in the Hewitt, everything's going to be spectacular. So we are pretty good. We have in almost all of our departments some form of like an engineer of some kind or professional staff that help us maintain our hardware and our software, and that's been really critical to keep things going longer than what is probably expected.
Mm-hmm. Thinking back to when we were in college, the basement of Hewitt Union, WTOP was there, student TV, WNYO, student radio, the Oswegonian, student paper, WRVO at that time was in, I believe, Lanigan, which is now in Penfield. So, and now NYO, TOP, and the Oswegonian are out in the Marano Campus Center. Mm-hmm. So where are these outlets going to be? Are they all moving to Hewitt Hall, or will some stay put?
No, all the student orgs are going to stay put in Marano. Okay. So even though obviously there has to be a tremendous amount of coordination and collaboration between the student media orgs and what goes on in classrooms and our faculty and all of that, the student organizations are still very much student organizations. There aren't any just like when you were there aren't any faculty members that are pulling the strings behind the scenes saying, you got to do this, don't do that. So, they are totally funded by our student association. So unless they are getting donations from alumni or something like that, or special gifts that just, local philanthropists maybe are donating, it's all of that is funded through the student association, and they're very happy to be sort of in that kind of nucleus of the Marano Campus Center. And it makes a lot of sense for TOP with all the, broadcasts of the hockey games and stuff like that too. It's a little bit easier.
So Hewitt's going to be like the lab, and then you'll be able to apply it at at the stations, the media centers in Marano.
Yeah. I hope this isn't offensive to the three of you after your professional careers, but it's sort of like Hewitt is where you learn why you're pressing the button, and then you go out and then you press all the buttons when you're, out in TOP or NYO or something like that. We're still very much in the, even though that the media industry and landscape has changed so much, even since you were on campus. And I think, I graduated undergraduate, I think the same time as you guys. So we're all the same age. Very different when I was going to college too, what my media organizations looked like. So even though everything is digital now and it seems like it's different and potentially easier, we are still very much in the business of teaching students why. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing it this way? What's the sort of theoretical underpinning to all of that? That's still really important to us, I don't want to lose sight of that liberal arts education. That's important.
Mm-hmm. And Hewitt's going to be like the new Lanigan, basically, where all the classrooms are, right?
So there will be classrooms. There'll be some general use classrooms for all of campus. And then there will also be classrooms and lab spaces that are dedicated to our programs in SCMA. Yeah.
I was going to say it's probably a bigger version and a much cooler version than the Poucher labs that we were attending back in the day.
Yes. Yeah. Hopefully, if it's not cooler, then we went wrong somewhere. Yeah.
It's definitely going to be
flags are going to go up everywhere.
Yeah.
I wanted to return to the tuition aspect for just a second. So I'm putting my I don't have kids, but I'm putting my parent hat on, and I have a teenager who's starting to look at colleges, and I see that the cost of SUNY tuition is about $25,000 a year for in-state, including room and board and all that meal plan.
Right.
What would you say to the parents and their children about whether that is still a worthy investment, especially for SCMA grads who maybe may face lower starting wages than majors in business, engineering, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, first I'd probably acknowledge that it's a very natural question and a natural concern for people to have. We know just sort of, the public trust in higher ed has eroded. Full stop. We know that we're experiencing that. And that's certainly a challenge for people like me to find a way to sort of regain that public trust. And I think, people used to go to college to be better members of their community and better citizens. And now it's a very different thing. And people have different expectations and different outcomes for attending college. So, I mean, I could certainly say things like, oh, well, on average, a college graduate makes $1 million more than, a person without a college degree, and they're happier and they're healthier, and all these things are documented. And that's nice, but I don't know, I do a lot of open house events, and I've got sort of the soft sell and the hard sell, depending on how the session is going. But ultimately, I mean, I would put our programs up against the programs of any top school that has something similar, whether it's, a media school or something like that, or an art school. I feel really confident that our academic programs are worth it. And so if you can get a comparable education, I would argue it's better. I mean, you guys know how much hands-on opportunities you had when you were at Oswego. That hasn't changed. Those things still exist. And if the students do it right, and they sort of come through the ranks of whether it's the media organizations or it's our graphics club or just working on their films. If they do it right, they are graduating with better than entry level job experience. They shouldn't even be applying. I mean, to your point, Kevin, we do have some concerns that a lot of our students are underemployed when they first graduate, but they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be going for that entry level job. They should be looking for one rung higher. And that's, probably the pitch that I would make to parents, that your students are going to be very well prepared to enter a career. We have, career readiness is a huge focus for us and SCMA, for the campus too, but SCMA explicitly, we're working on that this year, and embedding a lot of career readiness skills right into our courses. So I'd say, okay, if you are going to pay half or maybe even more than half, 75% cheaper to go to Oswego, where you're going to get a better education, you have just as many, if not more, opportunities, because you're going to be able to meet more people, network, go to events like a reunion dinner and meet people. there's really, really no question. So I would say if money is something that people were worried about, then we're a great option. And I can promise you, we're not going to let you down.
Off of what you were just mentioning, like a student is in school there, they're obviously getting a great education, and, compared to the equipment that we worked on, the equipment is, a gazillion times better than what we had when we were in school. And they have all this knowledge that they've gained. But for someone like, and I can speak from experience on this, graduating and then, trying to find a job, right? And then you're like you said, you should be going for that rung higher. But how do you speak to the students and tell them, it's hard because sometimes people don't want to hire you. You're technically entry level, right? Because you're a graduate, you just graduated, but you have probably more experience in doing some things that other people did because they didn't get a chance to do as much. How do you explain to them, keep persisting for those jobs and not just settle for an entry level job just to kind of get a paycheck?
Yeah. So thank you so much for that question, Jason, because I think it goes back to what we started talking about, which is confidence. Like, and these students, and this is why we're also focusing on career readiness. Again, we feel our students are solid. Their skill sets are solid. They're going to be fine. They're going to go out. They're going to do awesome things. No worries. They're going to be great. And we actually know that our Oswego, once you sort of get past that 5-year mark after graduation, that's when the Oswego graduate really hits their stride. And that's where they start seeing a lot more upward mobility. So, it might be a rocky start, or might require a little bit more perseverance when they first graduate. But we know, like, once they've been out for 5 years and kind of established themselves, their rise after that is pretty meteoric. I mean, it definitely accelerates. So I think, when they're coming out, it's our responsibility. It isn't just, okay, well, you finished all of your programs, you checked all the boxes for all the major courses that were required, and you did it, you did gen ed, and good for you, you're done. Like, we have a responsibility to make sure that they know how to talk about their skill set. And this is what we're finding is our students, their resumes are awful. And they don't, and, maybe because they think, okay, well, I didn't get to do an internship because I had to work all summer because I had to pay my tuition, not my parents. I don't have any family contributions. Like, I'm putting myself through college, so I can't afford to do an unpaid internship. Fun fact, Oswego will let you get a paid internship and earn credit. There's a lot of schools that don't allow you to do that. They make you choose one or the other. But now we push, particularly within New York State, I can't say that we require our internship partners to pay, but pretty close. We're trying to make sure that happens. But for the student who's putting themselves through college, they might be like, well, I didn't do an internship, or I was working so much, or I was taking care of my little sister or my family, so I couldn't join WTOP. And they're like, so I don't have any experience. Why would anyone hire me? Well, we just sit them down with our career coach for, after 30 minutes, they can have a life-changing conversation with the career coach that translates all that work experience that they had and, enumerate all the skills that you have, whether it's teamwork or collaboration or leadership, whatever it might be.
How do you talk to prospective students? Like, what's the level of interest from prospective students right now? Are we seeing less people applying? Are we seeing more people applying over the years?
Yeah. So I think the number of people that are applying is relatively stable. There's different ways that number or, that group can kind of be manipulated. A lot of institutions now, just because for financial reasons, have longer openings where applications, you can do a free application. And if you do the SUNY app, you can actually apply to a bunch of different colleges with just one application. So I think when you've got those free application weeks and things like that, it increases the number of applications that all universities receive. Then it really comes down to selectivity and then ultimately people committing to the university. So, I think the number of people total that are applying is relatively the same. But we've definitely seen, so I think in like 2015, 16 is when SCMA had its highest enrollment numbers. We're down about 200 total students from our highest level. And frankly, a lot of that is in the communication area. So while our art and design programs, music, theater, cinema and screen studies, everybody else is sort of holding steady, if not growing, we have seen some declines in the communication area. Now, there is a national trend, just in general, that is something that is going on. But, and I think we may have talked about this over the weekend at some point. One thing that we're looking really hard at right now in the Comm Studies department is the title of our major, broadcasting. Is broadcasting really meaningful to, a 16, 17, 18-year-old now? I don't know. So it's something that we're thinking about. And certainly not something that we take lightly. I mean, when you are known, literally you're known for this particular program, messing with any part of that secret sauce is really risky. So we've got to make sure that we're doing it for the right reasons and that we land on, if we change the name of the major, that we land on the right mix that's going to attract students, but also just be descriptive of what we do, and certainly pay homage to what we're known for.
On Saturday, you, Chris, and I, we actually were speaking about this question. Where does SCMA, kind of stand and rank among other schools? I know how you feel about it. You made it perfectly clear on Saturday, and I don't disagree with you. But where does it stand among, similar programs, right? We have the Newhouses of the world and the Ithacas of the world, and, that everyone looks at and they're like, well, those are, the top-notch schools in the country. They're also $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year.
Right. Yeah. Wicked large endowments and all of that sort of thing. Yeah. So sometimes it is hard to compete, and I get it. Students want name recognition on that resume when they go out and they apply for that job. There's no real metric to compare ourselves to one another. There's no easy way, everything is pretty university based, like, US News and World Report, and which we always do. Oswego does great. I mean, that report just came out a couple of weeks ago. We moved up a bunch of steps, which is fantastic. We're really excited about stuff like that. Every now and then there's, I don't want to call it fake, but there's a less than stellar publications that claim like, Oswego has the best broadcasting program in the nation. It's like, who are you and where are you coming up with that? Who did you decide? And it's like, they interviewed 15 alumni from maybe 5 different schools, and whoever said, well, we have the best chicken patties, so therefore we are also the best.
Can't disagree with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Yeah. I will say, so, to try to answer your question, I guess, more seriously, while I can't sort of apples to apples say we're the best, we definitely, with SCMA specifically, we're really the only school that combines the programs that we combine. So there's obviously Fredonia has a great music and theater program. The communication broadcasting is a little less known. It's a pretty small department. Their art program, a lot of it is geared more toward art teachers and, music teachers, stuff like that. And then, Purchase is kind of like the art school, but that's, again, a different thing. It's not the whole collection of programs that we have. I mean, I will say, just sort of from the finance perspective, and we're one of the healthiest SUNYs. We learned recently that there are 19 SUNY schools. I don't have a list of what they are, but there are 19 schools that are financially distressed right now. And thankfully Oswego is not one of them. So, we've, with President Stanley's leadership, she really has sort of stewarded the institution in a really healthy way financially. And so we're grateful for that. So we definitely are better positioned than some of our peers, particularly a lot of the comprehensive schools, which were considered, there's 64 student campuses. That includes community colleges. 42 of those are comprehensives, which basically means they're primarily undergraduate institutions with some graduate. So Cortland, Brockport, Buff State, Oneonta, they're all considered comprehensive. So Plattsburgh, Potsdam, we're doing a lot better than a lot of our sister campuses. So grateful for that too.
I have a 2-part question for you. Coming up soon, there's going to be a fundraising campaign, which you had mentioned earlier, for the program to get it to the forefront of the media industry. Can you kind of expand your thoughts on that a little bit more? And also, can you also expand on the Laker Legends program as well?
Sure. So, I give past leadership a lot of credit. So we, for a long time, kind of thought that we were going to do some kind of a fundraising campaign or something splashy when Hewitt opened. And then at some point, someone was like, well, why don't you do it for all of SCMA? Why are you focusing on Hewitt? I mean, Tyler was just renovated as well. So again, to the point where our technology is incredibly expensive to maintain and to purchase when those times come. The Creating Laker Legends campaign is going to be to create an endowment for the School of Communication, Media, and the Arts that will help support our technology needs in perpetuity. That's the plan. So we're still sort of quiet phasey with that. Working now, we're getting to the point where we're starting to identify naming opportunities. So, if we want to name it the Mooney School of Communication, Media, and the Arts, I'm here for it. Let's talk. Let's do this. Yeah. Or the Throwing Bagels School of Communication, Media, and the Arts to be more inclusive. Yeah.
Be more like the Mooney pencil holder. That
Yeah, but it's definitely, when I saw that list for the first time, there's some sticker shock and the prices for these types of things. But in all seriousness, it is the campaign really should be, and it's important. We've talked a lot about this, that it's for everyone. That we want to make sure that what anyone contributes, that they make. They're made to feel like they are part of something bigger. And so, anywhere from the $25 donor to the $25,000 donor, everyone should be treated with the same amount of respect and gratitude. Doesn't matter how much you gave, because it's all going to add up and it's all going to support our students. And that's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do.
Well, when I win Powerball tonight, I will gladly give a nice donation.
Okay. Good. I'm so glad that this is being recorded.
Yes.
Chris, did I answer your question well enough?
Yeah, I think so. I just had a follow-up really quick. What are some of the other ways that alumni can contribute besides financial? Like, obviously networking is a big thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that that's where we see a lot more of our successes and a lot more of our sustained sort of giving to the campus. And that's great, because that's what's making our sort of day-to-day lives of our students better. So we've got some set programs. I don't know if you guys have ever participated in the Alumni Sharing Knowledge program. Have you?
No,
I have not.
Don't think so.
I'm not.
Okay, well, I'm sure I'll be sending you an invitation to that. It's a quick form that you can fill out online, and it pairs you with a student. So we have a new guarantee that any student, when they enter SUNY Oswego, will be paired up with a mentor should they choose one. So let's say we've got someone that says, yeah, I want to, enter the broadcasting field, or I'm interested in broadcasting and mass media, but more from the financial side. Is there someone that I can talk to about that? So you can sort of fill out your personal information, the type of conversations you'd want to have with students. And then you kind of sit there and you wait for the phone. Well, probably not the phone to ring, because we don't answer our phone anymore. You probably get an email that's like, hey, we got someone. Do you want to meet with this student? So that's huge. I would recommend any alumni that are listening to this podcast, if you've not participated in the ASK program, Alumni Sharing Knowledge, you can certainly go to the University Advancement webpage and get information about that. Sign up, get paired up with a current student. You could change their life. So that's a big one. And when you do stuff like that, it also, like, if you want to come to campus, that's always our preference, that you can actually meet with students face to face, but you also can Zoom into a class. You can, guest lecture on something if that's what you want to do. We're happy to have stuff like that happen. You can certainly start a scholarship. Most of the scholarships that we give out these days are need-based. I would say like almost 75% of the scholarships that our students are getting are need-based. And so if you want to start a scholarship and you can get a bunch of people together, and that's another great thing about all of this, like you could always pool a bunch of you together and you could name a scholarship in honor of one of your favorite professors or something like that, which is also pretty cool. But I would say coming to campus, visiting with students, being available to be a mentor, attending networking events and professional development events that we have with students. That's really where you're going to probably see the biggest impact and feel the biggest impact, because you'll actually get to interact with the students.
And that leads into my question, where there was a panel discussion before the Hewitt Hall tour where there were alumni talking to each other about how to best how you can contribute to Oswego, whether it be monetary, whether it be through networking, or whether it be through the Ask program, or just about anything. But one of the threads that came out of that panel discussion among alumni was, we want to help, we love helping, but students are not taking advantage of that. Do you get that sense as well?
Yeah, and I think that this is something that we need to, we being the faculty, to work a little bit harder, because the last thing I want to do is ask you to give up time in your very busy life and your schedule with, work and family and all of that, just, trying to have a life, and agree to meet a student on Zoom at 7:00 on Monday night, and then you're just sitting there and nobody shows up. Like that gives me nightmares. I certainly I never want someone to feel like their time has been wasted or not meaningfully spent. So with some coaching and starting early, which is something, I don't know, we didn't necessarily talk about that in that session that you're referring to, Kevin. But that's on us, that's on the faculty. And to start the first semester that they're on campus, we need to be having conversations about what they should be doing, what they should attempt to be doing. So, I never want to scare off the introverts, because there's a lot of them out there. If I go in hard with like, listen, if you're not networking with 5 people your first semester, you're never going to make it. That kid's not going to make it to midterms. So got to be really delicate in some instances. But even like teaching that type of student, and we certainly have a lot of them, particularly in the arts. We love the quirky mix of the students that we get in SCMA, and some of them are incredibly extroverted and they just jump off the page. You probably met a bunch of them this weekend, and then you probably also met one that you just felt like you were pulling their teeth out to get them to say something. It's rough. So we've got to find a way to help all of those students, no matter what their comfort level is, get to a point where they can actually be good advocates for themselves and learn how to talk about what's going on. So yeah, we got to do some work on the follow-up. Sounds like Mike Teicher very vividly has been burnt a couple of times with students not following up, and that's the last thing I want.
Yeah, me personally, and I'm sure the guys also saw, like, I definitely met quite a few people this weekend, students that ran that whole spectrum, from the most outgoing student possible to the super quiet, person who was like, afraid to come up, but one in particular came up and really, I gave this girl a lot of credit. Like, she came up and you could definitely tell she didn't want to talk. She didn't really want to do it, but she kind of forced herself to do it. And I gave her a lot of credit for doing it, because I don't know if I would have done it when I was her age also. So there's definitely a lot of kids out there like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, going back to how can you help and how can you give back, telling your own stories, letting them know, like, when you were 22, when you left college, you didn't have it all figured out. Like, I'm 45. I haven't got it all figured out. Most days I'm like, well, I guess I'll try something different. That didn't work. Like, I'm still learning, growing, figuring stuff out, making all kinds of mistakes, having imposter syndrome, all that stuff, happens even when you're my age. So I think sharing your story, letting students know, how you kind of got to the point that you are now, letting that and humanizing that experience. But also, I think it's important for them to know that, particularly if they want to get into broadcasting or media, the perseverance that it requires. You guys all know this. You really got to stick with it. If you want to do it, then you got to stick with it, and you can't give up early. You got to keep looking for those opportunities and taking the jobs and the gigs that are maybe it's an overnight. You don't want to do overnights, but hey, this is how you get in and you get that experience and you start building a reputation for yourselves. Like, it's going to require a lot of hard work and perseverance.
Do they have a class, not a 3-credit class, because wouldn't make sense for a 3-credit class for something like this, but like a 1-credit class that kids can learn this kind of stuff, instead of just going to like the career services office? Is there, a more expanded type of class for them to do this kind of thing?
Yeah, we do have a couple 1-credit courses that are more career prep. It's a 100 level class. So we have a lot of students that are taking it their first year, maybe their second year. And even then, like, you're trying to instill good habits at that point. but it hasn't all really clicked for them at that point. So you need sort of like, the bookends, which we, for the most part, I think have figured out. So we have potentially this sort of, general studies GST course that's sort of, introduction to your field or careers, that kind of thing, where it just really is like resumes, how to go to career services, interviewing skills, things like that, how to look for jobs, how to use LinkedIn Learning, things like that. Most of our majors also now have a capstone, and that usually has a professional component to it as well. So not only are you doing some sort of culminating work in your discipline, but you're also talking about how you would package that, how you would talk about that in a job interview, or how you would list this on your resume as sort of critical experience that you've done.
All right, let's stop talking about the school. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about Dr. Jennifer Knapp. Okay. You went to Canisius for undergrad, correct?
Yeah, I did.
You were a biology major to start?
Oh man, where did you find this? Yes.
We dig deep here. We dig deep here.
Dive.
Our research department found that out.
That's right. We have a researcher.
Oh, do you guys need interns in your research department? I can.
That'd be awesome, actually.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yes.
We can't pay though. Sorry.
Yeah.
But you were talking about your background during the panel, and you mentioned, during your studies that you went from biology to communications. What made you start college? How long were you going for biology? Were you a pre-med major? Where did all this kind of divert?
Yeah. Well, first, I don't know if we'll be able to squeak this in or not, but I'm a Buffalo girl. So Bills, Sabres, I'm still basking in the glory of the absolute beatdown that the Bills put on the Dolphins yesterday.
It's okay. We're all Giants fans, so it doesn't matter here.
Yeah. I can't believe that. I feel really honored that you're actually recording during the Giants game right now. So
I know it's
they're going to lose. It doesn't matter.
I can rewind it and watch from the beginning later.
Yeah, so I was one of those kids that was like, I want to be a veterinarian. So when you want to be a veterinarian, you start pre-med. In hindsight, made absolute zero sense because I barely passed high school biology. And so, just like memorizing stuff, no way. That is just not something that I can do. So it's my first semester at Canisius. I'm in biology, I'm in chemistry, I'm in a math class, and I'm miserable. And I'm flunking bio like big time. Not even on the scatter plot. Like I'm just way, way off base. Thinking like, what am I doing here? Sort of like looking to my left and my right. And I'm also thinking, these are not my people. I have nothing in common with anyone in this room. So I had to withdraw from biology my first semester, which was a blow. Like I'm not like a super duper nerd academic person, but, did well enough. And so I'm like, man, maybe I'm not cut out for college. Total crisis of confidence. I stuck with chemistry for the rest of the year. For whatever reason, chemistry and I always mixed pretty well. I think it was because I had a really rad chemistry teacher who was a woman when I was in high school. And I think it made a big difference. So that stuff just kind of stuck with me better. But I had a friend who was going to a different college. And she's like, I think you would really like communication. You should try some of those courses. So I started taking public speaking and I'm like, well, this is fun. I like this, but I never practiced this. I hope no students are listening. I never practiced my speeches. I was like, I can do this. Like I had no problem talking in front of people. And then I would get B's on my speeches and I'd be like, but this professor obviously doesn't know what they're doing. Why am I getting B's? But
we all said that. We all used to say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do as I say, not as I do. Actually, you need to practice your speeches. So eventually I found my way to communication, particularly interpersonal communication. So I don't know if you guys took that when you were there. Com 212, I think the number is still the same.
I think it was a higher level class when we were there. I think it was.
There was also an advanced interpersonal communication.
Yeah, I took that one my junior year or senior year.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it was like all the cliches, like the light bulb moment, angel singing, the whole thing. I could not believe that you could study something like that and get a degree in communication. Everything that I was learning in that class, I was immediately applying outside of the classroom. So whether it was, friendships, romantic relationships, family relationships, my family will never listen to this. Terrible communicators. Just terrible.
What do you mean they're not going to listen to this?
I don't know if half my family know what a podcast is. I don't know. We'll see. I'll let you know. I'm going to visit home this weekend. So
okay.
Yeah, I'll bring it up at brunch when we watch the Bills and the Jags play on Sunday. But terrible communicators, though. They know that. I'm not saying anything that no one in my family would own up to. So it was awesome. It was just, and again, had an amazing professor that to this day is still a mentor. And it was very much, I want to be like her when I grow up. So graduated from Canisius, went to West Virginia University because that's where she went. So obviously I had to do everything that she did. Got my master's degree and loved it in Morgantown, stayed another 3 years and finished my doctorate. So fairy tale story.
And you just barreled through the postgraduate. That was really when things were it just seemed to get more and more interesting for you going through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you guys know graduate school, totally different situation. I mean, it really is all the depth and it's all the stuff that you love. And so one of the things that attracted me to the WVU program is the master's program was 1 year. And actually, it's not even a full year. It's more like 9 months. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. My master. I mean, to do that much work and coursework in basically 9-10 months it's still the thing I'm most proud of professionally, that I actually made it through with minimal mental breakdowns. But there's definitely, like, if you're not crying when you're at grad school, you're doing it wrong, I think.
What made you get your doctorate? What made you go for the doctorate at that point?
Yeah, so it was really all about being just like Melissa, and earning that and wanting to be a college professor. When I was in undergrad, even when I was in the comm area, for a while, I thought public relations was probably going to be the place that I landed. And then as I saw more of what she did and I started attending academic conferences with her and doing research, again, I was like, this kicks ass. Who would not want to do something like this? I can be in school all my life, only studying the stuff that I'm interested in, not all that other, biology and memorizing membranes and things like that. Like that's awesome. I want to do that. So, she made all the difference in my life. And so getting to do stuff like that and to teach, obviously being in the dean's office now, that transition from moving from being a faculty member, full-time, professor to an administrator was really difficult for me. It was a huge identity shift. I had always identified as a professor or as an instructor, as a teacher. And when that changed, it was really hard for me to sort of work through and create a new identity for myself. But I still love teaching. I still love watching students have those light bulb moments, or also recognizing that their family are terrible communicators. That's very satisfying.
So you mentioned teaching. You taught at Lycoming. How in the world did you end up at Oswego?
That's a very easy answer. So when I was at Canisius, as a comm major, I used to study with one of my friends there, Kristen Eichhorn, then Kristen Campbell. So Kristen and I would take classes together. We would study together. She would burn popcorn at the library and just stink up the whole building. And you would be, goofing around saying, oh man, wouldn't it be so great if we worked together someday? Well, here we are. So she got to Oswego in 2007. She took a position here. She was at Towson before she came to Oswego. And then it was the spring of 2008. She called me up one day. I was at Lycoming. And she said, are you happy? I'm like, well, I don't know what's going on. I could be happier. What do you pitch me? What do you got? And she's like, we have a position that's opening up. And that was Nola Heideball's, her position, as she was retiring from the Comm Studies department here at Oswego. So I applied, got the job, and still here, still loving it. So Lycoming was a fun little stop. Most people only know it as the home of the Little League World Series, so which was fine. Yeah, that was an interesting time in August trying to get around town when that was going on.
Great, it's a great venue though.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of fun for sure. But not ultimately a good place for me professionally. They were doing a lot of changing of the curriculum in the comm department. For a long time, I was sort of a department of 1, 2, just teaching all the courses. And that's not healthy for students. They need to have different people and perspectives and lived experiences and all of that. They shouldn't have a degree in one person. So it was the right move for me professionally to come to Oswego, and certainly never expected to be a dean. It's not a thing that little girls dream of. Like, who the hell knows what a dean does? But here I am, still trying to figure it out. So,
what did you teach when you were while you were at Oswego? As a professor, and can deans teach? I don't even know if that's a thing or not. Are you allowed to teach classes once you're a dean, or can you not teach classes anymore?
Yeah, they still let us do it. It really comes down to time. So sort of, you do it based on semester. If you got a big project or a grant or something like that is going to take up a lot of time, it's probably not a good idea to teach. But yeah, you definitely are allowed to teach. I'm itching to go back. I haven't taught, so it's been a couple of semesters now. I think spring 21 was the last time that I taught, and that was over Zoom, and it was the capstone class, and that was a grind. But when I was teaching primarily, one of my favorite classes to teach was Comm 100, which is the intro class. Taught that in Lanigan 101. I think at the highest point, I was teaching it to like 250 people, wow. Which for some people, that sounds like their worst nightmare. For me, like, I was in my element. And it was great because it's also a general education course. So introducing people who were biology majors to the communication discipline was always a fun personal challenge. And I always like to collect new majors and minors at the end of the semester after that class. So I did Comm 100, a little bit of public speaking early on. It's just sort of a rite of passage. Everybody's got to do that. Interpersonal communication, for sure. My all-time, hands down favorite course, closely followed by theory, because I am, at the end of the day, a nerd. And I love comm theory, organizational communication. Those were the ones that I was probably spending the most time teaching.
I don't think we had a theory class when we were there. I don't remember. Maybe we did. I don't remember that class though.
No, you probably didn't. So, I mean, you had media law, and that had its own.
Sure did.
And then I think there was like a programming course and a sales course. It is like 320 and 321.
Yeah, 321.
Yeah. Like the collection of courses that you took.
Yeah, those were Professor Hun's classes, 320 and 321. It was like your domain was like the communications aspect. His domain was like, he loved teaching all that sales side of broadcasting, owning a station and things like that, and running a station.
Yeah. He just recently, he was teaching for us up until I think really a couple of years ago. He was still teaching. So what a tremendous legacy he's had. Yeah.
Well, it was his Broadcasting 200 course, the history of broadcasting, that I met my wife, Alice, my future wife, Alice, that I met her in that class. So,
That's awesome.
You never know.
Yeah, true.
And she was a music major.
Yes, exactly.
Cool. You're an SCMA family. Oh my God, that's amazing.
How about that?
I love
it. I think her advisor had goofed, and so she had to take another elective. So she wound up picking Broadcasting 200, and the rest is history.
Amazing.
Yeah,
that's great.
Another discussion we had on Saturday, we told you to think ahead, right? Because we were going to ask you this question. What's your go-to meal in Oswego? And do you eat at the sub shop? Do you eat at the Oswego sub shop at all? And what's your sub if you do eat there?
Yeah. So cheeseburger sub all the way. Just kidding.
Undefeated, never lost.
No, I'm only saying that because I think it was Jason that I offended the other night, because he said everyone always says cheeseburger sub. I'm like, oh, that's boring. And then he said, no, that's my favorite. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be
we'd only known each other for like literally 2 minutes.
Yeah. So I'm from Buffalo, so we call it a chicken finger sub. I think the sub shop calls it like a chicken tender sub, but it's got to be in buffalo sauce, which is also something that we don't say in Buffalo. So yeah, give me a chicken finger sub for sure. It's pretty good. It's not as good as what I would get close to home, but it's not bad. It's better than most places around here. Yeah. I have it a cheeseburger. Yeah.
And what's your go-to place besides going to the sub shop?
Yeah. So I will say actually, and this is no joke, one of, if not my favorite restaurant in all of this area, in the Syracuse area, is in Oswego. So it's called Bistro 197. So I don't know if you guys got to eat there while you were visiting. I've never had a bad meal there. So it's actually one of my favorite restaurants.
Is it new?
Well,
It's relatively new. Yeah. It's probably been like, I don't know, maybe 7 years it's been open, quite a while. And it's lasted. There's a ton of new restaurants in Oswego. When I first got there weren't many choices. You know, sub shop was kind of the cream of the crop. But now there's a lot more restaurants that are trying to approach more of a fine dining kind of a feel. And they're all really good.
since you're from Buffalo, Jennifer, is it Anchor Bar or is it Duff's? Which one is
Duff's.
it? Duff's.
Yeah, no question.
See?
Yeah.
See, Duff's is the real Buffalo wing place, and the touristy part is the Anchor Bar. That's where the tourists go. But the real people, okay.
Yep.
I've actually never been to either.
They're both great. You won't have a bad meal.
But then again, I don't eat buffalo wings, so you know.
Whoa!
What?
I eat wings. Well, I eat wings. I just don't eat buffalo wings. I don't eat like I eat. I have a very sensitive palate.
I see.
I'm a very sensitive person, so I only eat barbecue. That's it, or like anything that's not hot.
Gotcha.
I mean, I don't know what the unfriending equivalent is on LinkedIn, but I'm gonna figure it out after this.
Oh man. And the like pizza there is a little different than like the pepperoni is like a whole different pizza in Buffalo, right?
It's a whole different experience. Okay. Yeah, that is not something. So there's a couple of places around here that have passable wings, but to get a real good pizza here it's still a challenge. Still
there's
searching.
Not much. There's really never been much pizza in Oswego. Yeah. So it hasn't changed.
Nor Syracuse for that matter. There's one really good one, and the rest are just doo-doo.
Yeah. Yep.
And Kevin and I are both from Staten Island.
Yeah.
So
you guys know pizza.
So for us, for myself, when I was in school, I would be, by the time I was ready, we'd hit a break or something like that. I'd be like jonesing for like a bagel and a slice of pizza.
Yes.
It's like, just get me home and give me a bagel or pizza, please. It's the first thing I do when I get home.
Yep. So true.
I didn't even know what a chain pizzeria was. Growing up, we just ate from local places. And why would you go to Domino's?
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. Yep.
Well, this has been great, Dr. Knapp. Thank you so much for joining us. This was so much fun. And we will put actually the link to the Ask program on our website when this podcast goes live. And we think it's great. And I think you'll see our names show up. Well, I can speak for myself. I'll put my name in there, and Chris and Jason, hopefully they'll follow. And then
I will as well.
Of course, yes.
And then the Throwing Bagels podcast booth, that's going to be at Hewitt Hall. So we'll figure out what to do to make that happen. So.
Yeah, you heard it here first, everyone. Yep. Great. This has been so much fun. Thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Go Lakers.
Go Lakers. Thanks, everybody. Go Bills.
And that was Dr. Jennifer Knapp, the Dean of the School of Communication, Media, and the Arts, otherwise known as SCMA at SUNY Oswego. Dr. Knapp was officially named Dean earlier this year. So great to have her on the podcast and a lot of great information about SCMA and where it's headed. So it sounds like the future is really bright.
Yeah, I thought she was great. I was speaking with her on Saturday. Chris was there as well when we spoke to her, and very personable. She seemed like she was over. She told me, she was like, I'm super excited to come on the podcast. And it's funny because as soon as she saw my name, she knew because you'd reached out to her, and she knew exactly who we were. So she was like, "Oh, I'm coming on your podcast on Monday." And I was like, I know, I'm looking forward to it. And then she insulted me about my cheeseburger sub, win some, you lose some.
Very true.
It's funny because when we were talking to her on during the comm dinner, just before the comm dinner, it actually made me want to go back to school. Like I want to experience all this stuff again. Like it seems so awesome,
Yeah. I was joking around earlier in the day saying all this new equipment and all this beautiful equipment they have. I'm coming back to school. I'm going to start all over. Do they do 4-year graduate programs? Because I'm going to start all over again. And then, when we were speaking with her, we also, to that question that I had asked her about, the competitiveness of the program, she had said to me, she goes, and that's why I kind of mentioned it that way. She had said to me, like, I'm a very competitive person. And she's like, I want our program to be the best, not only in the area, but, for everywhere, and I mean, it's a big step, obviously, to get past like a Syracuse name and stuff like that. But, she is, I give her credit. She's very, adamant about it, and she wants to make it the best that it can be. So I look forward to where it can go.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, I mean, Oswego's got some star power too, man. Like, don't forget, Al Roker is like one of the most known personalities in television. So, and he went to school at Oswego. So what did we decide that it was pronounced? We just dropped the Oswego. That's how they say it in Oswego. It's Oswego.
I'm not saying that.
Oswego.
I'm going with Oswego.
The natives.
I'm going.
Yeah.
It's always going to be Oswego to me.
Okay. My in-laws are Fulton natives. So Fulton's a city about 10 miles south of Oswego, within Oswego County. So there's a lot of Oswego going up to the race at Oswego. So that's it.
It's like a silent O.
It is.
It is. Yes. Just like Jay, look, Staten Island, Staten. The TEN at the end never happens.
Staten Island.
Staten Island. Staten Island. It's one word.
Staten Island. It's like the people who are from Long Island. I'm from Long Island.
Long Island. I love it. The nuances.
Yeah. But just quickly, like, recapping the weekend. Like we said earlier, the three of us, we haven't seen each other literally. I think it was 2011 the last time we saw each other. We were all up there. Chris's son was like, I don't know, like 5 years old or something like that.
Like 3, actually. I think it was like 3 or 4, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know if we hit up a hockey game that day. I don't think so. I think we just drove up and drove around and walked around campus and stuff like that. But it was great to be back up there and see everything. And like I said, hit up all the places that I haven't eaten at and God knows how long, so, and see everyone, see you guys, see other people that we haven't seen in forever. So it was really, it was just great to catch up.
I think the last time we were together, I believe we were on a team playing kickball for the Belief kickball tournament. So
that's right. It was that weekend.
Yeah. That's correct. Yeah.
So we were all together. We all visited the campus. We went to the media center. And then 12 years went by, and really we owe our podcast to that moment, because I think, Jason, or was it you or was it Chris who started the group text? You put in the photo of, I think it was a sub, wasn't it? A picture of the sub.
Maybe.
Like, I haven't had one of these forever. It was like a pin location of the sub shop. Like, man. Right. And then we just started conversing back and forth through 2022. And then within that same chain that you started, then Chris said, why don't we start a podcast? And
exactly. Yeah. I mean, we'd always talked here and there, but we weren't like chatting nonstop, and then all of a sudden, that's when it started. And then all of a sudden it was like, let's do a podcast. Okay, sure. Let's do a podcast. 9 months later,
here we are.
Baby's born.
We are. It's great. We're having important people on. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Next is Al Roker.
Well, you mentioned Chris Star Power. The the panel discussion before the Hard Hat Tour, the creative director of CBS News was a 2005 graduate. He was in that panel. Someone who's an executive at Paramount was also on that panel. You had someone who had been with ABC News for 30 years was on the panel. So there's so many people who may not be like nationally known names,
Sure.
but they are people that are very high up the chain, and they all came from Oswego.
Right. And to add to that, we met a lot of current students that were trying to make connections, like Dr. Knapp mentioned. Yeah, I mean, some of these kids are just so far ahead of where I was. Me personally, like where I was at the same stage as they are now, like, man, oh man, are they set up for success? And that's so awesome to see.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
The tools that are out there now were not accessible to us when we were kids.
Right.
Dude, I didn't have a reel-to-reel editor at all.
No, right. We weren't able to splice it home.
You know how much one of those things would have cost? You'd be like, hey, Mom, Dad, I need a reel-to-reel editor.
Right.
You'd be like, what? It's only like $3,000.
Seriously. Yeah.
So yeah, they're already coming in with way more experience than we ever had through high school. And I give them credit for being at that dinner and for reaching out, and and like Dr. Knapp alluded to, the difference between Oswego and the SUs and maybe the ICs to Ithaca colleges to some extent is you can walk in day one and start doing stuff where other places like Syracuse, you're on the bench, you're buried in the depth chart.
Right.
And
the three of us just jumped right in and started doing stuff like day one.
Day one.
All you had to do was just show up.
Yep.
It's true. I mean, my freshman year, I'd been on campus for like a month and a half, and I called a hockey game on TOP. I mean, it didn't air for like 4 days later, but that's not the point. The point was I called a hockey game on TOP.
Yeah.
I was literally a freshman I'd been there for a month and a half, and they were like, who wants to do it? And me and this another freshman raised our hands, and they're like, okay, sure, you guys can do it. And that was it,
I started like almost immediately doing sports updates during intermission of hockey games as a freshman. I was doing that. And then my second semester, I was a news writer at WRVO, the NPR station, and then writing for the Oswegonian and doing TOP. So there was just so many things out there that you could do. And you can't really, there aren't many other colleges I can think of. And yes, I know I'm biased, but I think the three of us are biased somewhat.
Oh, I mean, of course.
But I don't know that you can get that experience at a lot of other places.
Or very few
it's
places.
Definitely hard.
Like that.
It's definitely hard. There's very few places that you can do that. I mean, I applied to Ohio University, right? They have one of the better programs, quote unquote, one of the better programs in the country as well. And, I didn't get into their school of journalism, and I was like, okay, so I'll just reapply next year, and they're like, yeah, sure, no problem, but you're not guaranteed to get in. I'm like, what do you mean I'm not guaranteed to get in? Like, they're like, well, we got to take freshmen and transfers. I'm like, yeah, I'm not coming here. Sorry, I'm not busting my behind just to like then be told again I'm not getting in. So I was like, see you guys later. I'm going to Oswego.
There you go. Oswego was my... Like I did a tour of a couple of places. I'm trying to remember now. I know I went to Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey. And there was a couple of, I don't know if it was Seton Hall. I don't think it was Seton Hall, but Seton Hall, and I'm going off on a tangent here, I'm sorry. But Seton Hall, I remember had a heavy metal station, WSOU.
Yeah, I know a lot of people went to
pirate radio, baby. So they were blasting Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax and like that. I would listen every once in a while. So that's kind of how Seton Hall was on my radar.
Montclair has a good program too. Montclair has a good program too.
Montclair. But then SUNY Oswego, SUNY Cortland, I visited SUNY Cortland, and then I went to Oswego, and I'm like, man, Oswego blew them all away. And so then that made my decision. And so there you go. So it was either Oswego or Cortland, and I went to Oswego.
And now you live in Cortland.
And now I live in Cortland. But Chris, like, what about you? Was Oswego, like, where were they as far as when you were making your consideration?
I mean, Syracuse was number one on my list, obviously, for obvious reasons. Sure. But there was a sticker shock.
Yes.
Price was like way astronomical. I'm like, yeah, can't afford that one. So then there was Morrisville and Oswego. Okay. And I actually ended up going to community college for a year just to get some of the gen ed stuff out of the way and save some money. But Oswego, I went to Oswego. That's what I decided on. I had some friends that were already going there, and they're like, yeah, it's awesome. So I visited, and it was a simple decision.
Yeah. Well, let's all click on that Ask Alumni Sharing Knowledge link that we'll put up on our website, and we'll do that.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll do
also,
podcast.
I'm being at the risk of being overly ambitious. I did take a whole bunch of photos of the Hewitt Hall hard hat tour. I know Jason took some as well, so maybe we'll put a gallery up. On. If you see one there, you'll be pleasantly surprised. We'll put it that way. If it's not there, sue me.
We'll try to tell you what it used to be. When you were in. I kind of tried to take my pictures in order, so I knew what things used to be, but it may, we'll see.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I'm like, okay, this is just pictures of a shell of a building.
Yeah, just a lot of cement everywhere.
But all right, I think that'll do it for this edition of Throwing Bagels. We will have another huge guest next time around, where we chat with. Speaking of Laker legends,
for sure,
the one and only head coach of the Oswego men's ice hockey team, Ed Gozik, will join us the next Throwing Bagels. And arguably, Coach Gozik has seen more thrown bagels than any of us combined.
Appreciate it. I appreciate you wouldn't even want to talk about throwing bagels.
We're gonna have to get his stories, though.
We're gonna have to
for sure
have to do it. So we are looking forward to that. We'll preview the upcoming season, of course, and talk about his career. He played at Oswego back in the 80s. He came back shortly thereafter. He did the pro circuit for a little bit, and then came back, was an assistant coach at Oswego for a lot of years, under a couple of head coaches, Don Unger, George Roll, and then took over, and boom, national championship. Practically right out of the gate.
Great recruiter.
Yep. Great recruiter. A natty.
Yep. So we're looking forward to that and sharing some stories about Great Laker hockey with Coach Gozik on the next edition of Throwing Bagels. Thanks again to Dr. Knapp, the Dean of SCMA, for joining us. Keep tabs of us online. I can talk at throwingbagels.com. You can email us throwingbagelspodcast@gmail.com. We have a blog coming up next week, and then Coach Gozik a couple of weeks after that. So take care. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jason. It was great seeing you guys.
Thanks to Dr. Knapp as well. Peace out.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.